They said heroes don't hide. But what if hiding the truth is the only way to protect everything you love? My name is Helena Rourke. I'm 34 years old, and to my family, I'm a traitor. I didn't betray my country. I didn't sell secrets. I didn't turn my back on my oath. But I did make one decision, one brutal, necessary decision in the field, that cost lives. Not American lives, but lives nonetheless. And that decision, wrapped in classified orders and national security protocols, has followed me like a shadow ever since. Last Thanksgiving, I came home for the first time in 3 years. The air still smelled like pine needles and gasoline, the familiar staleness of Dad's garage, where he used to fix up old cars before his hands started trembling. Mom made her cinnamon rolls, the kind that stuck to your fingers with melted sugar, but the warmth stopped there. We sat around the table, and the silence was loud. Nobody asked me about my tour. Nobody said they were glad I made it back in one piece. My younger brother Mason, who used to show off my photo in uniform to his buddies, didn't look up from his phone the whole meal. When I asked about his new job, he said, "Why don't you ask the villagers you left behind?" His words hit like a sniper round. I didn't respond. I couldn't. What could I say without violating a half-dozen non-disclosure agreements? Without unraveling a mission I was still not supposed to acknowledge? Mom cleared her throat. "He didn't mean that," she whispered. But I saw the way her eyes slid toward Dad like she was seeking his approval. Dad stared at his plate. His hands were clenched. He didn't look at me. He hasn't since the news broke 2 years ago. They don't know the full story. No one does. Not even most of the command chain. All they saw was a redacted report and some leaked footage that painted me as the woman who abandoned a village under fire. The only words Dad's spoken to me since I came back? "You should have never worn the uniform if you were going to stain it." And then he walked out of the room. So I ask you, have you ever been hated not for what you did wrong, but for what you had to do right? For making a choice no one else dared to, knowing it would cost you every ounce of love, reputation, and peace? Take a breath. Take a moment. And if you've ever been misunderstood, judged, or exiled for something the world never gave you a chance to explain, subscribe to the channel. Like, comment. Tell me your story too. Where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Now, let's listen to my story journey. I didn't always carry this weight. Once, I was a daughter who made her father beam at military ceremonies. I was the big sister Mason called his superhero. I used to sit on the back porch and trace the stars with my fingers, dreaming of the skies I'd fly through one day. And I did fly. I flew farther than they ever imagined, farther than they wanted me to. But honor, real honor, it doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it's dead silence around a dinner table where no one will look you in the eye. Even the family dog, Rusty, didn't come greet me when I walked in. He sat by Dad's recliner like the lines had been drawn. After the meal, I washed the dishes by myself. No one offered to help. When I finished, I stood outside in the cold for a long time, looking at the stars again. They looked the same as when I was 8. Only now I didn't feel like they belonged to me. Later that night, I heard Mason on the phone with someone. "Yeah, she's here." "No, I didn't say anything." "What's the point? She'll just play the victim like she always does." That stung more than the slur. I could have walked away. I could have confronted him. But what would I say? Actually, I saved 37 lives that night, including my entire team, and sacrificed a strategic location because we had no backup and no air support, and our evac bird got shot down? It doesn't roll off the tongue over turkey. I went back to the guest room, where my old posters still hung. Top Gun, a wrinkled NASA diagram, a photo of me as a cadet. I lay down, still in my jacket, and stared at the ceiling. I used to think coming home meant healing. But sometimes, home is where the wound was made, and going back is just reopening it. So I did what I always do when I don't want to fall apart. I recited the names of the men and women under my command, the ones I got out alive. Every night I say their names before I sleep, because they remind me that I made the only choice I could, even if it cost me everything else. I wasn't always the outsider. There was a time when I was the pride of the Rourke family. Back then, Dad would introduce me to anyone who'd listen as my daughter, the future Top Gun. He'd beam so hard I thought the sun rose from his chest. He was a Navy man once, mechanical crew, but he never made it past Petty Officer First Class. He used to say, "You're going to take the name farther than I ever could." And I believed him. Believed in us. Mason was just a kid when I left for the academy. Every time I came home, he'd ask me to flex and show him the real military muscles. I'd laugh, lift him onto my shoulders and tell him, "Strong enough to carry you and a mission at the same time." He used to write me letters too. I still have them. Crayon handwriting, misspelled words. "I miss you, Lena. You're my favorite soldier. Come back soon and teach me how to shoot a laser." Back then, my world was simple. Serve with honor, protect your country, make your family proud. And I did. I graduated in the top 5% of my class, specialized in field intel and mission logistics. I wasn't flashy. I didn't chase medals, but I got the job done. Quietly. Effectively. By 29, I was already being briefed on operations that never made it to paper. Blackout zones, strategic evacuations, civilian intercepts in areas where even our satellites hesitated. But the cracks started showing on one specific mission, classified under the codename Night Vale. It wasn't supposed to be mine. Our unit commander had been grounded last minute with a respiratory infection, and I got bumped up to field lead with only 12 hours' notice. We were told it was a village intercept. Intel indicated enemy movement using local infrastructure to smuggle arms through remote mountain routes. The operation was simple on paper: secure the perimeter, verify civilian safety, tag caches, and retreat before sundown. But nothing about that day was simple. We landed under cloud cover. Everything looked quiet. Too quiet. Kids were playing soccer by the rice fields. Women hung laundry in peaceful silence. No indication of armed militia. But our tracker showed thermal movement in 3 key huts, and 2 of them were loaded with ammunition stockpiles. I remember radioing base, "We need civilian evac before detonation. Repeat, we have eyes on non-combatants." The answer came back cold. "Negative, targets have priority. If compromised, initiate Protocol 11. Protocol 11. Burn the site, no questions." I hesitated. Just a beat. But I saw my sergeant's eyes. We'd lost 3 good people 2 weeks ago in a similar stall. I couldn't afford a repeat. So I made the call. We moved fast, evacuated who we could. But the militia struck back before we finished extraction. One of the stockpiles exploded. Chain reaction. Shrapnel. Smoke. Screaming. We held position. Returned fire. Lost 1 man. Saved 12 others. But we couldn't save them all. 9 villagers didn't make it, including 2 children. I still see their faces in my sleep. By the time we flew out, I'd already filed 3 internal debriefs, 2 casualty reports, and 1 ethics waiver. I knew what I did. I knew why I did it. And I knew it would never look clean on paper. But what I didn't expect was the leak. 2 weeks later, a sanitized version of the footage surfaced, blurry shots of the fire, children crying, and my voice issuing the order. No context, no backstory, just headlines. American officer abandoned civilians in covert operation. Rourke, hero or war criminal? My hometown, once the place where folks clapped when I entered the diner in uniform, suddenly became silent when I walked in. I wasn't their pride anymore. I was the woman who got children killed. They didn't ask questions. They just watched the screen and decided. Even my family. Dad never confronted me outright. But the next time I visited, my portrait in uniform was gone from the wall, replaced by a generic, "God bless our troops" flag. Mom avoided eye contact, said things like, "We're just trying to keep the peace." Mason unfollowed me on social media and posted a single quote: "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil." No name, but it didn't need one. The court-martial never came. Internal review cleared me, but the damage to my name was done. I became a walking whisper. I took reassignment voluntarily. Moved to logistics and strategy, away from field command. Safer. Quieter. Less likely to leave anyone bleeding under my command. But every time I opened a news feed, I saw the words: traitor, butcher, disgrace. None of them knew the full story, because I wasn't allowed to tell it. So I learned to live with the silence, until one day, years later, it all came crashing back with a phone call. My sister's voice on the line, cold and sharp. "Don't come to Anna's birthday. Dad says it's not a good idea." "Why?" "You know why." And just like that, I was erased again. The mission that changed everything didn't even have a name I could speak aloud outside a sealed room. To the world, it was a localized conflict incident. To those of us on the ground, it was chaos measured in seconds, decisions weighed in heartbeats. But let me walk you through it, the exact moment that rewrote my life. We'd landed in Sector 7, near a small village pressed between two hills and a river. The terrain was lush, deceptively tranquil. The kind of place where goats grazed near old stone wells and kids ran barefoot with sticks pretending they were swords. Our bird touched down at Oro 700. Intel had come in hot the night before. Enemy arms dealers were using that very village as a transient safe zone. The higher-ups feared they were staging munitions to strike a nearby NATO facility. Speed was everything. I radioed in as we moved into the outskirts. No hostiles visible. Civilians present, requesting humanitarian corridor before assault. The answer chilled me. Negative. Execute Protocol 11. Priority is neutralizing the stockpile. Civilians are non-essential. I looked at my second-in-command, Reyes. He was 32, father of two, had this steady jaw that only tensed when he knew something was about to go sideways. He muttered, "They're telling us to torch it, even with kids here?" I nodded once. "They are." I had minutes to make the call. The militia inside had already spotted us. They were armed. We could retreat, regroup, and risk a full frontal assault later. But that meant giving them time to move the weapons. Or worse, use them. I had a squad of 14, and there were over 30 lives in that village, including our intel sources who'd been quietly passing us location data for months. I decided to split the team. Half would evacuate civilians. Half would breach the two target huts. Reyes would lead the civilian side. I'd take the risk on the breach. It was a hellstorm. As soon as we kicked in the first door, we were hit with a spray of gunfire from an upper corner. I dropped two hostiles, took one to the shoulder, but we cleared the structure. The second hut wasn't as lucky. Improvised devices were wired along the inner walls. When the detonation hit, it took the life of Corporal Hensley, 24. Newly married, he'd been reading his wife's letter when we got the mission call. I still have the corner of that letter in my pack. Burnt. Illegible. But hers. We got the remaining hostiles down. Retrieved 6 crates of munitions, including anti-air missiles, and saved 28 villagers. But the blast wave spread fire faster than we could contain it. The river ran too far from the core to help. 9 people died. 3 of them children, and 2 of them had names I'd learned before the mission. Mina and Sarif. The daughter and nephew of our primary source. I remember running with their mother clinging to my arm, blood streaking down her face, begging me to go back in. "They are there! Mina is in the back room!" But the fire had already collapsed the roof. I had to pull her away. She screamed. And that sound, that raw, splitting grief, haunted me worse than any reprimand I ever received. I tried to file everything as precisely as I could. I wrote the full after-action report with detail, grief, and regret, expecting someone, anyone, to sit me down and tell me I did wrong, that I made the wrong call. But it never came. Instead, my superiors closed the case, filed under necessary loss with strategic gain. And then the leak happened. It wasn't some rogue whistleblower. It was an unintended consequence of bureaucracy. During a routine internal audit of field operations, a defense contractor conducting systems testing on data security was given controlled access to declassified footage logs for evaluation. One of their junior analysts, working remotely under a subcontract, identified metadata inconsistencies and flagged partial files for review. Somehow, whether through negligence or deliberate breach, one of those files, a heavily cropped segment of helmet cam footage from Night Vale, ended up transferred to a private cloud. 2 weeks later, it surfaced anonymously on a veterans forum, then Reddit, then Twitter, then the news. The footage didn't show Reyes carrying 2 kids out with smoke still clinging to his uniform. It didn't show the villagers we got to the evac site. It didn't show the crates of missiles that could have brought down an entire medical convoy the next week. It just showed the fire, the screaming. My voice, calm, focused, saying, "Execute Protocol 11. Prioritize clearance. Move now." That was all it took. Suddenly, I wasn't a field officer. I was a war criminal. The media didn't ask for context. Why would they? A woman in command, giving orders that led to dead children, that sells, that rages, that clicks. At first, I thought my family would ask me, that they'd call and say, "We know you. Tell us what really happened." But they didn't. Dad watched the footage in silence, then packed away everything from my childhood room, my ribbons, plaques, even the newspaper clipping of my first award. Gone. Mom texted a week, "I know it's complicated," but said no more. Mason? He tweeted a photo of a burned-out hut and wrote, "Some heroes wear fire." It went viral, got picked up by a veterans site that labeled me as the Smiling Reaper. A meme. That's what I became. You ever felt yourself vanish in real time? Not physically, but piece by piece. Your name, your story, your humanity, shaved away until all that's left is a symbol that no longer fits? I was told to stay quiet. PR advised me not to respond. The truth is sealed. If you speak, you could face charges. So I didn't. And in that silence, everyone decided what they wanted to believe. I thought maybe time would soften it, that people who once loved me might let their memories outweigh the headlines. But betrayal, even imagined betrayal, leaves a taste that lingers in every mouth it touches. Months passed, then a year, then 2. No one in my family reached out. I sent gifts, small ones, to my niece Anna, a stuffed eagle from the base exchange, a storybook I used to read to Mason when he was her age. Never heard back, not even a postcard. So I stopped sending, but I never stopped hoping. Until the night of Anna's 6th birthday. I wasn't invited, but I came anyway. Not to make a scene, just to sit quietly in the back, to wave at her from a distance, to maybe, just maybe, see some recognition in her eyes. Some fragment of the aunt she used to run to at airports with her arms outstretched. The party was at my sister's house, balloons everywhere. Mason was grilling in the backyard, beer in hand, laughing with some neighbors. Kids were running wild, high on cake and soda. I stayed at the edge of the driveway, leaning against my car, watching. Anna came out in a sparkly blue dress and a paper crown. She was radiant, beautiful. My chest tightened. I had this sudden memory of holding her the day she was born, her tiny fingers curling around mine. I wanted to call out, to wave, but I froze, because then I saw Mason spot me. His face hardened like concrete. He crossed the yard in long strides, stopping just short of my front bumper. "What are you doing here, Helena?" I straightened. "I just wanted to see her. From afar. I'm not here to cause anything." "You shouldn't be here at all. I'm her aunt," I said quietly. "And I'm your sister." "No," he snapped. "My sister wouldn't let kids die and hide behind a security clearance to sleep at night." A few parents turned their heads. I felt my throat go dry. I did what I had to do. What they trained me to do. I saved people. But you didn't save everyone, did you? That gutted me more than any bullet I ever faced in the field. Because he didn't want an explanation. He wanted someone to blame. My sister, Rebecca, came out a moment later. She looked at me like I'd tracked mud through a sacred temple. Her voice was even. "You need to leave." "I'm not trying to fight," I said, holding up my hands. "Just 5 minutes. I won't even talk to her. Just let me see her smile." "Not after what you did," she replied. "Not after what you became." I stood there for a second too long. Long enough to feel like a criminal caught lingering at a scene I wasn't welcome at. And then I turned. Got in my car. Closed the door slowly. But just as I did, I saw Anna through the window. She was looking at me. Small hand raised. Not waving. Just reaching. And Mason stepped in front of her, blocking the view. I drove home that night with my hands trembling on the wheel, the headlights blurry through unshed tears. Back in my apartment, I opened my closet and pulled out the wooden box I kept at the top shelf. Inside were all the letters I'd written but never sent. Dozens of them. To Dad, to Mom, to Mason, to Anna. I'd tried every tone, apologetic, proud, desperate, explanatory. None of them felt right. None of them were enough. I flipped one open. The ink had smudged. It read, "Dear Dad, I know I can't fix what happened, but I wish you'd ask me what I was really trying to do. I wish you'd just ask me once." I put the letter back in the box, closed it, buried it again. I thought about leaving the service. I came close, really close. I had my papers halfway done, but something in me couldn't quit. Not because of pride, not even out of loyalty, but because I still had something to prove. If not to them, then to myself. I requested reassignment again, this time to a command that would never touch field ops again. Humanitarian response logistics. Not glamorous, no medals, but no villages to torch either. I spent my days moving supplies, coordinating field aid, rerouting water to flood-prone zones. Quiet work. Invisible work. But clean. And in that quiet, something unexpected happened. A letter. Not from my family. From a woman I didn't know. "You don't know me, but my husband was one of the soldiers you pulled out that day in Night Vale. He came home. He met his daughter. Her name is Mina, after the girl who didn't make it. Thank you for saving him." That one letter kept me breathing when nothing else did, because it reminded me, even in the fire, even in the hate, there was life saved, and maybe that was still worth something. The first time I visited the memorial wall, I didn't wear my uniform. It was a weekday, early morning, the kind of cold that sticks to your skin even through your coat. I went alone. I had been avoiding that place for years, not because I didn't care about the fallen, but because I didn't know where I stood among them. Did I have the right to mourn when I was the one who gave the order? Did I belong among the grievers, or among the names etched into that steel? But something pushed me there that morning. Maybe it was Anna's eyes behind that window. Or maybe it was Mason's words still echoing in my bones. Maybe I just wanted to feel anything other than the weight of silence. The wall was long, curved like a blade, polished enough to reflect the sky. Rows and rows of names. Some fresh, some faded. A few flowers, flags tucked into cracks, personal notes, dog tags. I didn't know where to begin, so I just started walking. That's when I saw her. An older woman, kneeling by the far end, fingers pressed against a name. Her shoulders were trembling, wrapped in a scarf too thin for the weather. A coffee thermos rested beside her, untouched. I slowed my steps as I passed behind her. "Did you serve with him?" she asked without turning. The question startled me. Her voice was gentle, almost apologetic. I hesitated. "No, not exactly, but I was there when he... Was it Night Vale?" she asked softly, now turning to face me. Her eyes were sharp, wet, intelligent. She wasn't guessing. "Yes," I said. She studied me for a long moment. "Then you're her." I nodded. "My son," she said, touching the name again. "Corporal Hensley. He was yours." I swallowed hard. He was one of the best. Brave, steady. He died saving others. "I know," she said. "They told me. The other soldiers who came back. They said he shielded someone smaller with his body. You made that call, didn't you?" "I did." "And it cost him his life." I looked down. "Yes." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a photo. Hensley in full gear, grinning, mud on his face, one arm thrown around another soldier I didn't recognize. "You know what he told me the night before he left?" she said, handing me the photo. He said, "Mom, I'd follow her anywhere. Rourke's the kind of leader you don't question. You just trust she'll get you home." I blinked, stunned. "He said that?" She nodded. "I blamed you. For a long time. Screamed at your name in the dark. Wrote letters I never sent. But then I met the men you brought home. One of them, we still have coffee sometimes. He told me that if you hadn't made that call, none of them would have come back. Not a single one." My knees buckled and I sat beside her on the cold stone. "I live with their faces every day," I whispered. "The ones we didn't save. I see them when I wake up. I see them when I close my eyes. I haven't forgiven myself." She placed her hand over mine. "But some of us do." I didn't cry. Not right away. But something broke open inside me, like a dam left too long against a rising tide. We sat there together for what felt like hours. Eventually, she poured me a cup of coffee from her thermos. It was lukewarm and bitter. I drank it anyway. That day, I visited every name from Night Vale. Reyes, Hensley, the local translators. And yes, Mina and Seraph. I whispered their names. Out loud. For the first time in public. I promised them I'd carry them. I promised I would not let their memory become fuel for politics or clickbait. I promised I would not run anymore. When I got home, I pulled out my uniform from the closet, brushed off the dust, laid it across my bed. Then I sat down and wrote the final letter I'd never dared send. This one wasn't to my father or Mason or the public. It was to the general, the one who had signed the orders, the one who had vanished behind bureaucratic silence. I wrote, "You asked me to do the impossible. I did it. I took the heat so you didn't have to. And I will not stay silent anymore. Not because I seek redemption, but because those we lost deserve the full truth." I didn't know what I expected, but a week later I got a call from his office. "Colonel Hastings would like you to come to D.C., his assistant said. "There's going to be a full operations review, and he wants you to speak." "On record?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "This time, everything will be on the record." The briefing room was larger than I expected. Cold, high-ceilinged, the kind of place where voices echo whether you want them to or not. I sat alone at a long table, my dress uniform pressed and stiff across my shoulders, ribbons aligned with precision. Across from me sat 3 generals, 2 colonels, and a civilian official from the Department of Defense. Behind them, a half-dozen aides and note-takers, all with tablets, all watching me like I might spontaneously combust. It had been 4 years since Night Vale, and for the first time, I was allowed to speak. State your name for the record. Lieutenant Commander Helena Rourke. And your role in Operation Night Vale? Acting Field Commander due to the illness of the original CO. The first few questions were procedural. Where we landed, what intel we had, the timeline of decisions. I answered them all with precision, with dates and times etched into memory like battle scars. Then the civilian leaned forward. Tell us about Protocol 11. The room went still. I nodded. Protocol 11 is a classified engagement order permitting asset neutralization even when civilian presence cannot be fully confirmed. It's designed for moments when hesitation means mass casualty. Who authorized Protocol 11? I looked up. Directly into General Hastings's eyes. Sir, I said carefully, you did. He didn't flinch. Didn't nod either. Just rested his hands on the table and said, And did you follow that protocol? I did, with caution. I split the squad, ordered simultaneous extraction and neutralization. I took the breach unit myself. And in your own words, what was the cost? My throat tightened. I forced it open. Corporal Hensley, 6 local civilians, 3 children, all lost. And the gain? 28 lives saved, including 10 American personnel. 6 weapons caches disabled. 2 shoulder-fired missile systems recovered before they could be deployed against NATO aircraft. There was a pause. No one moved. No one breathed too loudly. Then the colonel to the left said, Why didn't you release this information earlier? I wasn't permitted. The mission remained classified. I followed orders, including silence. And your family? Another asked. Did they understand? No, I said, my voice soft. They knew what the media told them. And what they believed filled the silence I wasn't allowed to break. A beat. Then General Hastings finally spoke. He pushed his chair back, slowly, stood, and walked around the table to where I sat. The room watched in stunned stillness. He removed his cap, held it in both hands, and then, in a gesture I never expected, not in this life, he saluted me, a sharp, deliberate salute. We stand, he said, his voice heavy, because of her decisions. The room remained frozen. Even the aides stopped tapping. One colonel blinked as if waking from a spell. I didn't return the salute, not out of defiance, but because my hands were shaking. It was the first time anyone had ever said those words to me. We stand because of her. Not you should have done more. Not why didn't you save them all. Not you're a disgrace to the uniform. But this. We stand. He turned to the room. Make it public, he said. Declassify what we must. The narrative ends today. After the meeting, a junior officer approached me. He was barely 25, wide-eyed and nervous. Ma'am, he said, my brother was on your team in Night Vale. He told me you were the only reason he's alive. He never stopped talking about you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. That night, I walked the streets of D.C. with my coat wrapped tight and the stars above me like they were when I was 8, still dreaming about flying. Only now the stars didn't feel so far away. I wasn't looking for redemption anymore, just recognition of the truth. And I had it. But the hardest part was still ahead. Because even when the truth is finally spoken, those who branded you a traitor, they don't always want to take it back. The next morning, I boarded a flight home. Not to the base, to my hometown. Because after 4 years of being their shame, their scandal, their scapegoat, I was going to show my face, not to prove them wrong, but because I had nothing left to hide. The air smelled exactly the same: pine and motor oil. A little gasoline from the old can that always sat next to Dad's truck. I hadn't stepped foot in my parents' driveway in nearly 3 years. The last time, I left with tear-filled eyes and my mother refusing to hug me goodbye. But now I stood there, in full uniform, a folded letter in my coat pocket, official clearance of the operation, stamped and signed. Not for bragging rights, not for vindication, just for the truth. I heard a screen door creak open behind me. Mom stood in the doorway, a dish towel in her hand, frozen in place, like she wasn't sure if I was real. "Hi, Mom," I said softly. She didn't speak. Her lips parted. Her eyes looked older, heavier, maybe from years of carrying silence like a cinder block in her chest. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I added. "I just wanted to see you. And Dad. Just talk. That's all." Her voice, when it came, was thinner than I remembered. "He's in the garage." I gave her a small nod, walked past the porch I used to run up barefoot, and toward the side where Dad always tinkered on engines he never quite fixed. The garage door was open. The radio inside was playing old country songs. Hank Williams, if I wasn't mistaken. Dad sat on his old stool, sanding a wooden block that looked like it had no purpose except to keep his hands moving. He didn't look up. "I heard the news," he said finally. "Your little hearing." "It wasn't little," I replied quietly. He set the block down and stood up. He wasn't as tall as I remembered, or maybe I was just seeing him without the pedestal for the first time. "I suppose you think that makes it all okay now?" "No," I said. "Nothing makes it okay. Not for the people we lost, but at least now, people know what really happened." He rubbed his jaw, then glanced at me for the first time in years. His eyes scanned the ribbons on my chest, stopped at the combat action badge, and lingered on the small silver star just above my heart. "You were never supposed to be in the dirt," he murmured. "I raised you for the skies." "I did both," I answered. "I flew. And then I bled." He turned his back to me. I waited. Then, after what felt like a lifetime, he walked to the corner of the garage, pulled down a cloth-covered frame and turned it around. It was my academy photo, still in its original oak frame, the glass cracked in one corner but otherwise intact. "I couldn't throw it out," he muttered, "but I couldn't look at it either." "I understand." He paused, long and hard. "I thought you abandoned them. I thought you abandoned us." His voice broke a little, and I didn't want to believe it, but everyone said. "I know. I didn't ask," he said. "That's on me. I should have asked my own damn daughter." My throat swelled. I wasn't ready for tears, not here. Not. "I would have told you what I could," I said. "Even if it wasn't much. Even if I had to whisper it between the lines." He looked at me, this time without pride or shame, just a father seeing his child. "So what now?" I shrugged. "I go back. There's more work to do. Not in combat, but in rebuilding. We're setting up logistics programs across bases now, helping civilians, protecting water supplies. It's not glamorous, but it's yours," he finished. A long silence stretched between us. Then he walked past me, opened the door to the house, and called out, "Marianne, set another plate. She's staying for dinner." I almost collapsed right there. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Inside, the house smelled of meatloaf and onions. The wallpaper was still the same, yellowing at the edges. The hall clock still chimed 5 minutes early. Mason wasn't there. Neither was Rebecca. That was fine. Mom placed the plate in front of me like nothing had changed. And maybe that's how she needed it to be. I accepted it. We ate mostly in silence, save for the hum of the fridge and the distant drone of the evening news. But when Dad passed me the salt, he said my name. "Helena." Just that. Like he remembered who I was. And after dinner, as we stood at the door, he placed a hand on my shoulder. Not heavy, not commanding. Just there, and I knew, deep down, that something in him had shifted. That maybe one day, Mason would too. Or maybe not. But it wouldn't stop me. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I had stood before a room of power, before silence and accusation, and told the truth. And someone had finally saluted. I didn't expect a parade. I didn't expect apologies to rain from the sky like ticker tape, or for the neighbors to suddenly bake me pies and ask for selfies. The town didn't transform overnight. But something shifted. A week after dinner with my parents, I went for a walk down Main Street. I kept my head down, wore civilian clothes, the sun was warm on my back, and the breeze carried the smell of early summer, cut grass, melting pavement, the faint sweetness of blooming honeysuckle. Outside the post office, I passed by Mrs. Abrams, my high school librarian. She had once told me I had the posture of a hero. After the scandal, she stopped saying anything at all. But that day, she gave me a tight smile and said, "It's good to see you home, Helena." Simple words, no fanfare, but they mattered. A few blocks down, I passed Mason's old hangout, the cafe where he used to spend his weekends typing on a laptop, dreaming of becoming a journalist. I didn't go in. But I saw him through the window. He saw me too. Our eyes locked. He didn't move. I didn't either. Then slowly, with visible effort, he stood and walked toward the door. I stayed still, heart pounding, like I was 20 again, and waiting to face my first commander. The door creaked open. He stepped out, shoved his hands into his pockets, and stood in front of me without saying a word for a long moment. Finally, he said, "I read the report." "I know," I replied. "I was wrong." I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because there were too many things packed into those 3 words for me to unpack in a single breath. Then he looked away. "Anna asks about you. Keeps the eagle you sent on her bed." I told her you were busy. I didn't know what else to say. "She should know the truth," I said softly. He nodded. "Yeah, she should." Another pause, then, "Come by Sunday, if you want. Rebecca's out of town. It'll just be me and Anna. We're doing pancakes." I didn't answer right away, but I smiled. "I'll bring strawberries." He nodded again, a little embarrassed, a little relieved, then turned and walked back inside, without another word. That night, I pulled out the last letter I had written, the one I had never sent. It was addressed to no one in particular, just a single sheet with 12 words on it. I did not fail. I simply chose what others feared to face. I burned it, not because I didn't believe it anymore, but because I didn't need it anymore. The truth was no longer mine alone to carry. Weeks later, the ceremony was held. A closed military event. No press, no cameras, just a small, weathered group of uniforms under a canopy of flags. I was presented with a commendation, one that had been delayed for years due to the classification of the mission. It wasn't for valor, not for heroism. It was for judgment. For the act of making a decision no one else wanted to make. For standing in fire and choosing the path that left the most people breathing, even if it meant the world would never thank me. When they called my name, I stepped forward. General Hastings was there again. He didn't speak this time. He just handed me the medal and whispered, "The weight of command isn't carried with pride, it's carried with purpose, and sometimes with pain." After the ceremony, I stayed behind. Alone on the lawn, medal still in hand, the sky beginning to bruise into dusk. That's when Dad arrived. He didn't wear a suit, just his old windbreaker and jeans, and that same stubborn look on his face. But when he reached me, he did something I never expected. He saluted. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't textbook, but it was real. And in that moment, the past 4 years condensed into a single breath. He dropped his hand, cleared his throat. "Your mother made pot roast," he said. "You coming or not?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm coming." We walked side by side to the parking lot. Quiet, comfortable, the kind of silence that didn't punish, it simply held space. As we drove home, I looked out the window at the fields, the trees, the small winding roads that raised me, and I thought about what it means to be called a traitor by the people you love. It means you chose something bigger than yourself. It means you bore the burden of silence to protect what they could never understand. It means that sometimes being right costs you everything, until the day the world finally catches up. And if it never does, you still stand. Because they may never say thank you. They may never ask for the truth. But you know, you stood. And they stand now. Because of that. So when the world asks me, was it worth it? I say, yes. Because I still see the faces of the men I brought home. Because I still get letters from mothers who held their sons again. Because one day, Anna will know. And maybe, just maybe, she'll be proud. The end.